I don't know, it's like I'm walking down the street and I'm looking up because I feel like a safe's gonna land on my head.
A feeling of pending doom?
While on this channel, we've discussed the entire notion of the inevitability of Tony Soprano's death that is completely unavoidable, but not only is it unavoidable for himself, it's put a stranglehold on everyone that surrounds him, as this dark cloud that hangs over his head affects his family in Carmela and their children, his friends and everyone involved in his crew, and also his therapist and Dr. Melfi, as she too knows that Tony will eventually succumb to a death that is unlike the average individual. This pending doom that hangs over the head of Tony Soprano and everyone connected to him can be seen in Season 1, Episode 11, titled Nobody Knows Anything. And as the series continues, we can see that this dark cloud still lingers over the head of Tony. Whether it's Carmela constantly worrying about her husband's future, her future, and her family's future with her children possibly living more than half their lives without their father. Now, Tony's pending doom is an inevitability that traces back to the very first episode of the series. As when we're first introduced to Tony, he feels as if the best is over in the mafia world, and that the end is near.
It's good to be in something from the ground floor. I came too late for that. I know. But lately, I'm getting the feeling that I came in at the end. The best is over.
This is basically David Chase foreshadowing to us that in the very first episode of the series, that our protagonists, who everyone will come to know and love and hate all at the same time, will eventually die. As talked about immensely on this channel, an individual's life within the mafia is a life that is extremely dangerous. It's a life full of fear by constantly looking over your shoulder and looking into the rearview mirror. It's a life full of greed and jealousy that can separate friends and families. And it's a life full of murder, a theme that is constantly a part of the mafia life. And as we know, a life in the mafia basically only ends in two ways, as Tony said back in the first episode of Season 4, For All Debts Public and Private.
There's two endings for a guy like me. High-profile guy. Dead or in a can.
If you're enjoying this content, be sure to click subscribe and click the bell to get notifications on all upcoming Sopranos content. And be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram for everything Sopranos related. All links will be linked below. But what makes Tony's case of his pending doom so intriguing is that himself and everyone around him know that this inevitability is coming for Tony since day one, as this all ties into the demise of Tony, as many fans think the demise of Tony began in the first episode of the series, or when Tony made the jump to join the family business. In the episode of Nobody Knows Anything, it's an ironic title because it links with the idea and fascination that nobody knows exactly when or how Tony will eventually die. But we all know his death will come one day, and that his death will certainly be different than others. Throughout the series, we see many times of Tony speculating his death and discuss the thought of him dying. This is evident when Tony is talking to Dr. Melfi in particular, and we especially see this once he's come out of his coma in Season 6. Whether it's the thought of him rotting in jail when the FBI come to arrest Tony before his birthday getaway up north, getting whacked on the street, or just questioning the entire purpose of life since meeting the rocket scientist in the hospital, this thought has always been kept in the back of Tony's mind.
Now we die.
Why are you so interested in all this?
And my wife told me, I woke up at one point, I said, who am I? Where am I going?
Tony constantly thinks this way for two reasons. One, because his life is surrounded by death, as people that he has come to know and love are constantly in a revolving door of getting whacked or suffering from death due to the constant strain of stress that the mafia puts on an individual's life with the agita. We saw this with Jackie April Sr. in the beginning of the series, and with Eugene killing himself. And the second reason is because Tony has already survived multiple attempts on his life. The first being with the attempted assassination by his mother and Uncle Jr. The second is the car crash that he survived with Adriana, and the third with Uncle Jr. shooting Tony in the first episode of Season 6. And with all this, Tony is clearly not invincible, and he and Carmela know this for certain, and that this is all part of the pending doom that hangs above the head of Tony Soprano. As the series continues, so does the speculation on his death. This is because while in his coma, Tony goes goes through a series of dreams that alter his outlook on life once he wakes up, as he wonders the answer to the haunting questions that are who am I and where am I going, that were displayed heavily throughout his dreams.
I'm 46 years old. I mean, who am I? Where am I going? Who am I? Where am I going?
There's this theme of life and death that revolved around Tony's Coma dream episodes. As fans, Tony and his family wondered maybe this was it. Maybe this was finally Tony's time to go. Especially during the scene when Tony is about to enter the Affinity family reunion, where Tony is almost lured into the home by a deceased Tony Blundetto. When Tony wakes up from his coma, he states that every day is a gift, and while he does take on this healthy mindset, that quickly doesn't last long. When it comes to Carmela's fears of Tony dying early, she is especially worried about the pending doom that hangs over the head of Tony. While she's worried about her own future with the possibility of being a widow, she also worries for her children not having a father to lean on later on in life, and her financial status not being enough for her future. She doesn't want to wind up like a widow like most of her friends, if God forbid anything were to happen to Tony. So we can see that the pending doom of Tony's inevitable death doesn't just affect himself.
Well, let me tell you something. Or you can watch the fucking news. Everything comes to an end.
And in the final episode of the series, we can see that this nightmare, this giant safe or piano that has been hanging above the entire Soprano family, has finally fallen onto Tony's head. That Carmela's biggest fear, and Tony's as well, and that of him dying too soon, has finally come true, when Tony supposedly gets whacked right in front of his family while having dinner at Holston's Diner, and just when Meadow is walking in the front door. And it's ironic that Meadow just happens to walk in and see the last moments of her father's life, just as much as how she walked in on her father getting arrested the day before her graduation. A lot has been said about the overall theme of The Sopranos, as many have tossed out the themes of the American dream, death, and the preciousness that comes with life. That life is short, that you have to enjoy the little and precious moments that come with it. And in many ways, this is exactly what The Sopranos is all about, as we see David Chase provoke this message constantly throughout the series.
Someday soon, you're gonna have families of your own. And if you're lucky, you remember the little moments. You're supposed to savor it. It's important in life.
If you agree or disagree with this video, I would love to hear your thoughts about Tony's pending doom down in the comment section below. For more Sopranos content, keep it locked here, right here on this channel.